Delighted. Just delighted that the man playing bass on that record, former producer of this programme, Mickey Bradley.
Hello, Mark.
Good to see you. Good to have you back.
Yeah,
welcome
thank you
back.
very much.
Welcome back to Radio 4. I know you haven't left.
No, I haven't. No, I still come in on Fridays to do the
record show.
The record show.
It's
on Friday
very
nights.
good. I'm sure.
So it is.
I'm sure listeners would want me to acknowledge it's very good. It is very good.
It's very good.
Yeah. How you keeping?
I'm keeping great. Yes, good.
Undertoning away. I mean,
we were playing on Sunday night. We were playing at the Rockaway Beach Festival in Bognor Regis in England. It was great. Very good.
You still get a buzz?
Oh, yeah. But if the amp's not wired up right, I do definitely get a buzz. Yeah. No, it's good. It's always good. You know?
You become a different kind of a Mickey Bradley when you get on stage. I don't know. It's a brilliant. All of you have maybe not Billy, and maybe not. You know, the swagger thing.
I become a bit of a slabber.
It's brilliant, man.
The inner slabber in me escapes whenever I go on stage. So.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard Terry yesterday. Terry Hooley, your producer of that track back.
No, Terry, he didn't produce it. No.
Well,
he has. Why did I get so picky there? Terry was the man who set up the record company, and we did it for his record company.
Yes. But he
said the producer was a guy called Davy Shannon, and us. We produced it really.
But he said it was spit and sawdust. I mean, if that was brought out today, you'd think, God, that's a fresh record, and it still sounds like it to my ear anyway, Michael.
Oh yeah, well it is. We kind of don't want to say we didn't know what we were doing, because we did know what we were doing, because John and Damien especially, like they knew what they wanted the record to sound like. Billy knew what it sounded like. Fergal knew what it wanted. We all knew what we wanted to do, and we'd always hands up. We were copying the Ramones. Yeah. But no, the record at the time, like I've said many times, we didn't like what we heard at the time. Whenever the actual record came out, but then you listen to it and you realise, no, it is. I can't deny that it's good.
Yeah. And was Eamon McCann right? I'll never forget.
Eamon McCann's always right.
Yeah, but his analysis of you guys in a situation of chaos and moral crisis and
moral
troubles,
decay.
All of that, Mickey. It is more radical to write songs about Subudio girls and Mars bars than to be, with the conflict or waving flags. That your rebellion was that.
Well, I think Eamon's probably overstating it. It wasn't a rebellion. We didn't go, we're going to write songs which are not about the Troubles. We kind of did. At some stage, the idea would have come up, maybe write something about the Troubles. Now, John O'Neill, of course, is the main songwriter. Yeah. But I think we all kind of knew it's hard to do that right, hard to do that well. But anyway, most of our interest was in music, listening to records in O'Neill's front room. And the records that we loved were records which influenced us, we had like the Rolling Stones, Dr. Feelgood, the Nuggets LP, the Ramones, Buzzcocks and all that. So looking back, you can say, well, of course, what they were rebelling because they weren't writing about what was happening around them. But, a lot of records aren't written about what you're making or what happens around you. You write records and you write songs and you just, make stuff up.
But was it funny when John arrives with a song or about girls or Mars bars? Did you just have a titter? Because I find great humour in your songs.
No, because you could never hear the words, because I remember whenever we did a demo, that's when we did a song called Mars bars, and I remember Billy saying. Billy laughs, says, I never heard the words before. We used to play it like in the Casbah, but you could never hear what the words were. And Billy saying, that's very good there. That's fun. So, no, you wouldn't. Well, we always laughed at everything in the band all the time. But whenever it came to records and songs, you were there. We were in Sims's shed, or we were either up in Damien's bedroom, and John would come in. John would come in with the song, and he would show us the chords, and he would show Fergal the tune and all that, and Fergal would sort of sit in the corner and and then we would have a go at it, and we learned that don't worry if it's not great the first time, because we would have done some. And you kind of just play it, just keep playing it, and you make mistakes or you think things don't work, so someone says, "Why don't we do this instead?" and change that a wee bit. And but at the end of it, you sort of think you have a song, and you think, is this good? Yeah, we think it's good.
Should we? I'm just thinking, Michael. Should we mention Mrs. O'Neill's passing?
Yes, Mrs. O'Neill.
Terry had said yesterday that when the first box of records had arrived in Derry, he phoned her and she said, "Oh, Terry, isn't this great? There was 300 in the box." She's going, "Oh, the young fella's got a wee record." You know, it was Teenage Kicks, like.
Very
You know?
good.
But I mean, but Mrs. O'Neill, she sounds like she was a great.
Yeah, Mrs. O'Neill was great, Geraldine O'Neill, and even outside of being the Undertones to the Undertones mommy, she was quite an active woman as well in terms of women's aid, in terms of all kinds of things, So no, it was. She hadn't been well in a long time, and it was Christmas Day. So I said to Damien, and she died on the same day as Dean Martin and and George Michael, and he says, and James Brown. So she picked the right day. But no, she's been much missed.
Yeah. Michael, 70s and 80s, I'm always intrigued to talk to any of you who played back then. Jerry, famously excoriating of the show bands in which he played in part and all the rest. 70s and 80s, I mean, you guys shone like lights, obviously, and the Undertones was a big thing. Was it this golden era? How do you remember the 70s and 80s when you were finding your way as a band and then the bands, a lot of them came in your wake?
Well, I always look back and think that we were lucky because there weren't that many bands around. You think that Derry was full of bands, but it wasn't as full as it is now. There's hundreds of bands probably better than we were around there now. But we were in that kind of, our timing was great because we learned how to be the band 1975, 1976, maybe 74, like very, very early days. But we got Fergal about September, October 75, and none of us were, like, we only had ourselves. We weren't part of a great band. There wasn't a scene. It wasn't like there were other bands that we used to meet. No, basically it was just us five and a couple of friends of ours. So we would have practiced probably 2 or 3 times a week. John was always trying to write songs. Me and Damien, we started to do it later on. Billy wrote some songs too. But we were dedicated because we had nothing else to do. And it wasn't like we were, it's not like, we used to play football in the ballpark, down in the playground in the ballpark. We used to do that. We used to go down the town. None of us drank, really. We would have gone to pubs and there wouldn't been any great kind of drinking. So it was all about the band.
See, but when I got to know you, I thought, it always made me wonder, because for me, punks grew up with the wreckers, the hairpins and all the rest. But for you always to be numbered and labelled as punks, are you happy enough with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you weren't wrecking the place.
No, but that's
attitude.
It depends what newspapers you read, Mark. No, punk rock wasn't that. It was a reaction against the way that the music business had gone in the 70s. Yeah. It was all like anything. There are all different explanations for it. The one that I always realised was that bands by the mid 70s had become more complicated, more sophisticated, possibly richer, although not as rich as bands are now. And they kind of, if you were starting a band then, you couldn't, well, some people did, but we couldn't start a band trying to play, records like Dark Side of the Moon, which I haven't heard to this day, but that kind of complicated stuff.
Yeah.
And they were a wee bit up their own,
Yeah.
But by then there weren't, it's weird to look back, and there weren't that many bands who were playing fast R&B apart from Dr. Feelgood and Eddie and the Hot Rods in England. And it was kind of so rare that, the fact that these bands existed were in the NME, and then they made some records and everybody listened to the Dr. Feelgood record, first Dr. Feelgood. John had it, and we used to listen to that and we learned songs from that. In fact, I read recently that Clem Burke from Blondie, whenever Blondie were starting out, he went to England, he came back with a copy of the first Dr. Feelgood LP, and Blondie just went, this is brilliant, and they started to learn that too. So it was that, and then you heard about records, but you couldn't get records. You couldn't get old records. We heard about the New York Dolls records. Donald McDermott in Derry, he had the second New York Dolls LP, and he lent it to us, and we thought, this is great. He lent us the Ramones' first LP, and it was like Moses coming down with the 2 tablets, and you listened to this and you thought, this is great, and you learned it. So we were in perfect position for it.
Yeah.
There wasn't really any other band in Derry doing it. I'm not being arrogant. I just think, looking back, there was no one else doing it at that time apart from us in O'Neill's house. Donald was kind of in a band, but he wasn't really in a band. You know, he would do it as a kind of joke. You know, Dick Tracy. But we were just very lucky. We were lucky and we were dedicated, and also we had a great songwriter and a great singer.
Yeah. Good bass player.
Average bass player.
Solid.
Average, as the old joke says, not even the best bass player in the Undertones. Damien O'Neill is the best.
Listen, just put in a word. You mentioned Fergal. Look, everybody knows there have been different opinions down the years, but my God, he's been making an impression across the water. I mean, he's become like a national spokesperson for clean water, clean rivers on his feet at the Labour Party conference. God, I mean, he really has made his.
Well, he was always a big fisherman, always an angler. Him and Billy, they used to go out to the Faughan. And he was always doing it, along with a fellow called Pat Martin, who was at school with us. And then whenever Fergal went to England, then he got involved in the radio authority and this and that, you know. So it was well got, as they say, within certainly Labour Party circles. So whenever he for the last couple of years, I've seen him on Twitter and so on. Yeah, he's criticising the water
potential environment
water companies in England.
Political material?
No, he's far too smart for that. No, but he's and because of who he is, people picked up on it, you know, and fair play to him. And you read what he says, and it's awful about what's happening with water.
But he's a very good communicator. He's a brilliant communicator.
Okay, yeah.
Agree or disagree?
He's a singer. Yeah. He's a front man.
Michael, we thought we would have, mindful of the period that we're talking about, folks, Michael Bradley is my studio guest, the bass player in the Undertones, former producer of this programme, and I'll never forget that. And we're talking about the music of the 70s and 80s, particularly a lot of the bands that came from this part of the world. Michael, get a wee listen to this.